This is the presentation for the July 22nd meetup, the drone software meetup. We're going to talk about Qgroundcontrol customization. My name's Godfrey Nolan. Okay, so let's have a look at what Qgroundcontrol is. I'm not sure how many people know Qgroundcontrol, but basically it's an open source cross-platform ground control system. If you're using a Mavlink drone, chances are that you're using the Qgroundcontrol GCS. So lots of people use it, sources out there. So we're just going to basically say, hey, what happens if you want to put your own logo in there instead of wanting the Qgroundcontrol, or if you want to completely redesign the flight screen, the toolbar, what would you need to do? So it runs on Android, Linux, or Windows. I did see something in there about iOS, but I've never personally run on iOS, and I don't know how up to date it is. It's built on the Qt or Qt platform, so that's owned by BlackBerry, I believe. They bought that before their phone industry went bust. It's used in Qt's used a lot in dashboards. So I don't know if the figure's still true now, but at one stage, a few years ago, pre-COVID, it was 50% of all car dashboards use Qt as the platform. So when we have it, it's kind of what we have to do in Qgroundcontrol is that we basically do everything in QML, which is kind of a JavaScript, and then C++ for some of the more firmware changes. Runs on a Pixhawk controller. I ran all these examples on an Orange Cube, and we did use the NXP one too as well. It's like I said earlier, it's Mavlink drones typically. We've written an app which was Mav SDK. So basically, not using Qgroundcontrol, create our own white label GCS, which does run on iOS. But if you don't really have programmers on staff, you don't want to do that. The default is for most people for Mavlink drones is just to use Qgroundcontrol. It runs on ArduPilot or PX4 firmware. And here we're talking about quadcopters, but it also runs on rovers, tractors, VTOL, planes, that kind of thing. Sub-UASs. And then the main place it's used these days is for the blue UAS drones. So there's, I think, 12 of those. So if you don't include Parrot or Skydio, I would say the rest of them, Teal, Inspired Flight, whoever else on the list, it's Ascent, it's blue UAS. And it's using Qgroundcontrol or some version of it. So today's goal is to add some customizations to QGC. I'm really just going to talk about the 3 out-of-the-box examples. We have some other examples too for hiding settings. I'm not finished that yet, so I will put it up later when I'm finished it. And then this is all working with Windows. And then if I'm using the Orange Cube, it's ArduPilot. And but you could get it to work on PX4 too as well. So the setup, most of what the issue is with QGC that I've seen on the forums and all the different things is just the configuration can be a pain. Getting a working version can sometimes be annoying. If it works first time for you, that's great, but lots of people have issues. We did HereLink is an Android tablet. We did a version, some changes, modifications for a customer, and it was quite the effort to get that to work. But I'm just basically going to walk through what you need to do. You need to install Visual Studio 2019. We're going the Community Edition. You want to install Qt Creator. If you're going to do this for real work, so if you're going to get paid for this, then you should be paying the monthly fee for the license fee for Qt. We're using a custom installation, which is 5.15.2, which is what works. Everybody knows that works with QGC, everybody who does QGC. And that's quite an earlier version. We're not using there's a drag and drop Qt designer, I think it's called. We're not using that. This is basically, we are using the IDE, changing everything inside it. And then if you want to do Android, you want to install Android Studio. Make sure you also install the command line tools, CMake, and a tablet emulator if you want to have it. I did all of these just on Windows, the examples that I'm going to show today. Be careful when you're installing. Make sure that you, I would say, install the least, because if you take everything, take the defaults, you're going to spend most of your day just installing stuff. It'll download 5 gigs, and just be careful what you install. So even here for this is installing Visual Studio, if you just click off Live Share and IntelliCode, because really all that you really want is you're trying to get the C++ compiler. That's why we're installing Visual Studio. So Qt, make sure that you have the 5.15.2. And then there's basically, you'll want to make sure that you're installing the Android tools, the Qt Designer, and then the Qt 15.2. Hold on a second now. Yep, that was the other thing I was looking for. Qt charts, you got to make sure that you install that too. Once you install that, run through the rest of the installer. It's probably going to take you a little bit of time to do that. Then you want to download the QGC code. What worked for me, I just took the latest stable branch, and that worked first time. And then run a git submodule update minus dash recursive to make sure that all the submodules are downloaded too as well. If that doesn't work, you get an error when you run it when you try to build it in the Qt. You run a git model init and git model update. So here's the Qt creator, kind of very reminiscent of the Visual Studio, or not Visual Studio, Visual Basic type things that I've worked with in the past. On the bottom we have the compilation output, any issues. There's lots of help on forums out there if you get stuck with this, but essentially if you follow this route, I'm hoping you're okay. If you don't, and then just download the latest version, that might work too. If you're using a Mac, you can do it on Macs, no problem. I did find issues with the M1 chip, so if you're trying to do it on Mac, just do it with an earlier version of the MacBook Pro. So we can go with the ArduPilot. You don't need a full drone, but if you want, you can go with the ArduPilot or the Holybro, or for PX4 or NXP. We took this one from Hover Games. We've done that for the challenges in the past. So NXP run this Hover Games every year. I think the next one's coming up in September, and that's a good way for interns to get to know how to work with this stuff. Okay, once you get it set up, install the firmware. On my orange cube here, I'm just installing ArduPilot. And you basically want to just run it, make sure that Qgroundcontrol is running. So you do, if you go back here, we build, and then if it builds, we're just going to run it and make sure that Qgroundcontrol is working for you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about customizations. So within Qgroundcontrol, there's a folder called Custom Example. So if you want to get that working, just clean the previous build. It's just good practice. You probably don't need to in this example, but it's good practice. Then change custom example, rename it to custom. And then within the custom folder, assuming that you have Python installed, run python update qrc.py and then build again. And then you'll get a whole different version. Let me show you what it looks like. I think it's at the end. I'll have to show you in a second. It's got green colors, and then some of the icons have moved around. So within the folder, what do we have? Well, the most important files are the qgroundcontrol. I just did a tree on the custom example folder, which is now changed to custom. So you have the update qrc .py that we ran. The README tells you just more or less the same instructions I just told you. The README JPEG is what it looks like afterwards, and then we have Qgroundcontrol exclusion. So it's a neat little way that this works, and I might use this for other softwares in future. So if you can get away with it, you can make all the changes within the custom folder, branding changes, logo changes, color changes, and make your Qgroundcontrol stand out. And that will still isolate you from any upstream changes in Qgroundcontrol. So basically the idea is we're running on stable 4.2. When it goes to 4.3, we would just reinstall our custom folder and get everything again. That's pretty cool. So you can have basically different versions of the custom software for different users, different manufacturers, all that sort of thing. So that's basically what we're trying to do here. And like I said, the cool thing is that you get future forward compatibility, which is excellent. So the two files that we really want to look at are Qgroundcontrol.exclusion. So what you're doing is you're excluding the whatever QML files from the source code, and then in custom QRC you're telling this file here, you're telling update QRC what file you're going to replace that with. So instead of we have our flight widget layout .qml later on, and then we say ignore it within this, and we say within here use my custom one, which is in the resources folder. So custom fly view overlay is the one that comes with the example. The custom example is a great resource as well, really worth looking at, because you can see all the images that they replaced. So they've done lots of different things. The odometer is different in the out of the box custom example that you get when you download from GitHub. But for our example we're going to write our own stuff here. I will say there's one caveat with this Qground exclusion and custom QRC is if you are making significant changes. I'm not talking about changing colors, changing logos, changing images. If you're making significant changes to the to how Qground works, basically your file is replacing the file within the Qground source code, or your image or your widget. So if the next stable version is 5.0 and it's the fly view overlay is completely rewritten, you're not going to be able to just get your custom fly view overlay and replace it. You're going to want to make sure that you merge your changes. Okay, so we're going to really look at the custom example a little bit, toolbar customization and fly view customization is what I'm going to look at. I didn't get around to doing first run prompts yet. Okay, so we have our custom example. So here's what we do. So we rename custom example to custom, clean build, go into custom, run update QRC. You get this thing that says it is excluding the fly view custom layer flight display, and then we build and run. And then there's a lot of different things that happened. One, instead of having 3 choices here now, there's usually a mavlink here, if memory serves me right. Now you just got 2. The colors have changed to green instead of the yellow they were before. And then if you go into Qgroundcontrol in the IDE, into QCreator, excuse me, you'll see this is what it looks like. So you now have a custom folder that you didn't have. And then if you go into custom, you can see under resources that we have custom image, custom widgets, QML images. That's actually just a parsed text file. You can go have a look at the text file as well, which looks like this. So this is a great resource to if you want to learn how to replace images, and if you want to learn how to replace actual QML files themselves. Okay, so let's look at the custom toolbar. So we know that the main toolbar is where everything happens. So what does the main toolbar look like? So this is the main toolbar up here. So we have ready to fly. It's just you know, how many have your GPSs? What are your is there a radio signal? How much power do I have in my batteries? That kind of thing. So we want to change it. So basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to change ready to fly and put it over to the other side, or disconnect it if it's not connected. Okay, so what do I do? So I know that all of that is in the main toolbar.qml. So I'm going to say in my qgroundcontrol.qrc. That's actually wrong. That should be qgroundcontrol.exclusion. I am going to say exclude this file, and then I'm going to add a new one into custom.qrc, and you can do this with resources too as well. It's not that. So we have added please replace the Qgroundcontrol controls main toolbar with our custom main toolbar, which is in the resources. And then you create your main toolbar.qml and place it in the custom resources folder. The only difference here is I just basically moved the main status indicator. I changed it to parent right, and I didn't change anything. The visible, it's the same. You could change buttons, you could do a lot of stuff. I can see this QGC logo full, so you could change the logo there on the toolbar. Okay, so clean build, clean your build, go into custom, and then run update qrc.py. And if you're right, if you've done it correctly, you'll see that you don't just have the fly view custom layer from the custom example. You don't have main toolbar.qml showing up too, and then you build it and run. And then here's what it is before. Gotta fix a typo there too. And then here's what it is after. So afterwards, what we've done is we've just basically moved it to the side, as I explained. Okay. Here's a before and after look, so you can see that we hacked it and moved it over to the other side. Next thing we want to do is a fly view customization. So all I want to do is to move where this is. I'm just going to move it over to the left-hand side. So again, clean the build, make sure you're in the custom folder, add our fly view widget layer.qml to qgroundcontrol.exclusion, add custom fly view widget.qml to custom QRC, because that's what we're going to replace our fly view widget.layer, fly view widget layer. Otherwise it's going to break. And if we run update QRC, if we have done everything correctly, we will see the fly view custom layer is now being excluded. So here's what it was before, and here's what it is afterwards. So it's just gone across to the left. And in this case, we just changed anchors left and then anchors right, parent right, and that gets us this change. So I'm assuming it's the parent to the right. Okay, what did I do for the... I want to talk a little bit about resources. So all of this information, basically, I took it from Qgroundcontrol, dev.qgroundcontrol.com. If you want to get started with Android, this is the thing to start up with. Like I said, all the examples here I did in Windows, but we've done all this stuff on Android and here links, so you probably want to have a look at that too. A few years ago, somebody did a YouTube for an install walkthrough and then for adding a button. But I think they actually went into the code and changed it directly. I would not recommend that now. I would say definitely go and have a look at the custom files. So look at the custom example, change it to custom, make your changes there. There's a Slack group for PX4, which is pretty useful if you want to go out there. And then the other thing is, here is the obvious place to look for the information on custom build. It doesn't actually tell you how to do it, but it just gives you kind of indications about what you should do, and that's really what we follow today. The custom example folder itself is a really good resource too as well if you want to check it out there. So, you know, I'm thinking that most people, when they want to do this, just want to rebrand it to make it look like their own instead of Qgroundcontrol. Change all the images, you can change the colors, change whatever widgets you want, and if you do want to make some changes to the QML, you know, just be careful that whatever version you're running, that if you update the version, that that you've merged in your changes, you merge in your JavaScript. Also, in a lot of cases, there's not a lot to stop the user from just installing their own Qgroundcontrol. So just be aware that that might be an issue with your drone too as well. So if there's if somebody's running an Android tablet and they have access to Google Play Store, then they can just go and install their own Qgroundcontrol too, and that will wipe out the changes and get back to where you were before, and hopefully it'll work. Okay, so that's I'm really liking this approach. I think I really don't like, unless you're going to merge your changes back into the Qgroundcontrol GitHub. I think making changes to open source is fine if you're going to merge them in with the actual open source, but if you're trying to make your own branded version, then I strongly recommend doing it within the custom folder rather than changing the underlying source code yourself and then, you know, getting out of kilter with the open source as it moves to as they add new features. Qgroundcontrol is amazing for the amount of stuff that's in there. So cool that it's open source, that you get all this stuff for free, but there's going to be new changes, new features added in the future. So it'd be nice to take advantage of that. So I really like this approach where we get the best of both worlds. Okay, thanks very much.